And now we have our first panel discussion of today. Our panelists are Valerie Keller, the co-founder and CEO of Imagine, Charles Perry, the founder of Sustainable Future for All, and Jenny Wazenar, the Chief Sustainability Officer of our sponsor at Trivium Packaging. Welcome, panelists. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Okay. So, Valerie, can you hear us?
I can hear you, I can see you, and I am there in spirit, but here in New York City.
Okay, so you're in New York. Valerie, listen, thank you to all of you. You know, all of you are a real source of inspiration to me, and I really thank you for giving up your time and telling your stories today to all of those people out there in the world. So I'm going to go one by one. That'll be the most sensible thing to do. So could you tell us, Jenny, about your passion to resolve the climate crisis?
Well, my passion comes from within, and I think that every one of us has that urge to do something meaningful with your life. You want to create something that's remembered, that's built, that other people can build further on. And I decided quite early on to really focus on sustainability throughout my career, even when sustainability was not part of my job title or anything like that. Already on the Friday afternoons, I was organizing sustainability and social events. And that's something that everybody can do, so everybody can make a change.
Fantastic, fantastic. Okay, thank you, Jenny. So, Charles, where does your passion to resolve the climate crisis, when did it all begin?
Thanks, Jeremy. I think it's being inspired by other leaders that make a fundamental difference in the world for the better. So for me, Nelson Mandela, being South African, so I grew up there and I was motivated by becoming part of the anti-apartheid movement and studied politics, focused on conflict resolution in divided societies. And that took me to playing a role in the rebirth of the new South Africa with Nelson Mandela as a young man. And then fortuitously meeting Al Gore when he was vice president of the US, when he came to President Mandela's inauguration. And then being inspired by Al Gore, because I read his book, Earth and the Balance, when I was in my early 20s, and realizing that all of these issues around humanity and the environment were interconnected. So like Jenny, becoming a sustainability person, and specifically Al Gore focused my mind on the climate crisis.
Amazing, amazing. Valerie, sorry, I'm in awe of like this situation. I feel so honored, Valerie, right? I mean, what an incredible job I have to just be around the people in this amazing show who just do such extraordinary things, who are really on the front line for us. You know, I thank you all for doing the incredible work that you do. And Valerie, what about your passion? I know you have a lot of it. Tell us, where did it begin?
Yeah, Jeremy, thanks for that. And yeah, similarly feel honored and excited, not just to be with the panelists, but also everyone who's listening in today, because if you're listening into this conversation, then you're part of the movement and you're one of the people who's stepping forward to use your life, exactly as Jenny said, on the front lines of it. So my passion is very personal. I was born to a really poor family in the US, and I've been blessed over my life as I worked early into saying, very much like Jenny said, is I feel like I want my life to matter, to make a difference. And the best way that I found to be fulfilled was to help other people. It was energizing, it was fulfilling. And I worked early as a social entrepreneur and got into helping people who are poor and homeless to get back on their feet, and saw very early on that in order to really make change, that we needed to help solve the challenges, the help to get them there in the first place. And similarly to what Charles said, I've also traveled around the world. And when you're down in South Africa or in Myanmar or in Mongolia or India or in parts of the planet where you see the impacts of what's happening in terms of our climate, and you see the impacts on people, I have seen stuff I can't unsee. And once that happens, once you see what's happening in our soil, once you see what's happening with our waterways just being choked with plastic, once you see what that means in terms of like the Aral Sea that is now a carcinogenic floor bed and the livelihoods that have been lost as a result of that, the people get inside your heart. And that for me is the ultimate personal motive for me. I'm right now living where I started, which is to say it's more fulfilling for those of us who see and who care, who say are the people who are in our hearts, and those of us who have the opportunity to help to do something about it, have an opportunity, an obligation, and also it's way more fulfilling and more fun. And I think that's where humanity is right now, Jeremy, and I'm excited to be a part of this conversation to talk about concretely what people are doing to be able to step forward at this time, because it does feel like people are stepping forward. And as you know, much as you honor Jenny and Charles and myself, I think we are honored to be a part of what is a groundswell and is a movement around the world right now.
Incredible. Amazing. I want to talk about what each of you do, actually, because I really want people to know what you actually do day in, day out. And I'm gonna come back to that, even though it wasn't a question that I had on my questions to ask you, but people have got to know. So, but before we do, Valerie picked up on an interesting thing. There is an amazing moment here, and we put a question which you know about, which is about transformative change. Jenny, why is that important?
Yeah, the normal form of change or slow change is okay, is needed, but we have to think beyond the box. We have to think outside of the box, no, not even in a box. Boxes do not exist. We have to make a change that is completely way out of our normal way of thinking, even outside of our own planet, even outside of our own imagination. And that is transformative. And that's extremely difficult, because how do you get there? You only can get there. And I like that what Valerie was mentioning about traveling the world. You only can get there by picking up experiences from all the different parts in the world that we have, all the diversities that we have. And through that, you can create a new lens for yourself on top of what you already see and on top of all the things you already know, to really make a significant difference.
It's amazing. And we're going to get into how and where we can get information in a moment. Transformative change in relation to the climate crisis. I mean, this is crucial, right, to our survival.
Correct. Yeah, without transformative change, we will not going to get there. Look, if you just look at the numbers out there, we have about 380 million tons of plastics that we produce every single year. And that's about the same weight as all the people in the whole planet. I mean, the same weight. If you can just imagine that, that is what we have to change. And it's not only plastics, it's about all the products. How are we using our products? Also, as similarly in the presentation before, about all these plastics, all these packages, materials that we find out there, that is not the right thing to do. We have to make a change. We have to pick up and be responsible for what we bring into the world, but also what we buy as consumers. We have to take that responsibility.
And you work for one of the biggest packaging companies in the world. And so we can let you talk about that in a moment, because obviously this is an issue very close to your heart. So, Charles, transformative change. What does it mean to you? Can we do it?
For me, it's the way humanity governs itself. And so the topic today is climate crisis. So it's basically burning fossil fuels. We're burning 1.5 million years worth of fossilized matter every year. We're 8 billion people with extraordinary access to the Earth's crust through technologies and extraction opportunities. But what that means is we burn too much and we have too many greenhouse gases as a result. And when I spent time with Al Gore, 15 years ago in Nashville, Tennessee, he and Dr. Jim Hansen, the NASA Goddard climate scientist, they spent a week with us in a room. I was the only non-American to be invited to join them. And what they were saying was, if we get over 400 parts per million, we're in danger, real danger, i.e. we're in the end zone, and we're at 423 parts per million at the moment. And likewise, on another topic like smoking, we were able to suddenly ban smoking. So the question is, can we ban the burning of fossil fuels over time?
Big question, Valerie. Transformative change. What does it mean to you? Are we going to be able to do this?
I think so. I would like to just double down on pretty much everything Jenny was saying, right? I mean, I think that you talk about the mindsets and the ability to imagine something that's completely different. And my personal experience on this, the personal insight that I had is that when I came into the world, my parents, the sweet humans who caught me when I came naked and crying in this world, were part of a Christian sect. So I actually grew up in my early formative stages in what some people might have called a cult. And the insight that that brings for you is that the construct of the world that was around me was all created around the belief system of the people who were in it and the shared belief system. And the insight that that gives us now in the work today is very similar to what Jenny was talking about shifting the mindsets on it, about the ability to reimagine a world where what we make and how we make it, how we take from the land, how we put back in it, is fundamentally designed in a different way. And I think if we are awake now, and I do believe that we, and a kind of a large enough of us of a humanity are awake, that we have the ability to collectively imagine something that is new. And I'd like to say that the part of the game now is to scope it down, and transformational leadership, in my view, is not the individual hero anymore. And maybe, again, this is my patterning because I grew up in a collective. But actually, in order to be able to change the system, you're not going to be able to have Moses come down from the mountain with the 10 commandments of saying, thou shalt not do these things anymore. People are in a space right now where we're like, but this is how we do it. We make these things and then we have to sell them in order to get some money, in order to get some stuff. And so the ability to recreate the system has to be done by people partnering together. And that's been the core imagined theory of change. That's not a theory. I've seen it borne out time and time again. So when I went from the cornfields of Indiana to the halls of Davos, what we saw and see is powerful leaders in business, government, NGOs, who are human beings who are awake and care. And if we can put people together as people who say we connect as fathers or mothers, and that might be biologically or just people who care for the next generations, then we have the ability to do business together in a different way that can change the system. And we've seen that with Imagine when we started the Fashion Pact. So I co-founded it with former CEO of Unilever, Paul Pullman, when he retired. And we said, let's put a call out to say, okay, people who are working together within fashion. When you make something, the piece that I wore, actually, I'm wearing now, actually came from plants at one point. It used water. It might have been packaged in plastic and single use with hangers and this incredible amount of waste. And as Jenny was talking about, the statistics just are mind-boggling. But when we said, let's get the CEOs or the top leaders, because it's not just the heroic single CEO at the top, to come together, to take a stand together, to say, we are going to commit that we can change it together. And if we go along the value chain, and we've seen it again with food. So we got the food CEOs together from the inputs and seeds providers and people that others would say, oh my God, they're terrible. They're putting pesticides and herbicides, et cetera, in the ground. Well, okay, yes, and maybe we do want to go to regenerative. Okay, yes, they showed up saying that, but they could do it when they showed up as human beings with their fellow travelers all across the value chain, all the way to the Walmart retailers, Unilever, Nestle's in the middle, manufacturers. And so the core work, I believe, for us as human beings is to come together with our fellow humans who are awake and who care, who can partner together to change it. And that is transformational. And the one thing I just want to add on this before we get too far away from what Jenny just said, the ability to travel the world and see things. And so when we first started Imagine, I thought, okay, what we need to do is get these CEOs and these top leaders and these human beings to come, and we're going to be on the floorboard of the Aral Sea, and we're going to see it. And we're going to go to Kenya and the Masai Mara, and we're going to see it. And we're going to go to India. And then we got together in Zoom in the time of COVID. And within minutes, people could mobilize and come together. And I asked a single question. I said, when you think about the world today, what drives you crazy and what makes your soul sing? And that's now the same question we ask of people who are applying to come into the Imagine community. And what they said was that they had been traveling. They had also seen something they couldn't unsee. It didn't sit right with them. They were awake and wanted to mobilize together. And that, I think, is super exciting. The ability to change our minds by having different experiences has happened for many people already. And I think the super exciting moment for us is to know that people care, but many of us feel frustrated, we feel afraid, we see the data, and I think our greatest challenge as leaders for transformational change is to stay positive, is to stay hopeful, and to find those partners who are positive, who are hopeful, and who want to partner and work together. And I'm happy to share more very concrete insights about how we do that. But I think that answers your question, Jeremy, and I think I really wanted just to double down to say the mindsets are shifting or have shifted. People are awake and they do care, and it's about bringing the right partners together as human beings to then say very concretely, how do we partner together? How do we do business together? How do we change the rules of the game around regulation in order to be able to shift it for others?
Thank you, Valerie. Thank you. Definitely answered my question. Thank you so much for those incredible words. Thank you. So, Jenny, could you give an example? We just talked, Valerie was talking then about leaders and leadership, in relation to the transformational change that we want to see happen. So could you give us an example of leaders who manifested transformational change to avert the climate crisis?
Yeah, so we have heard already a couple of very inspirational names. So I was thinking of this a little bit differently. The one who inspires me most is actually Neil deGrasse Tyson. He is an astrophysicist. And what he does in his work, he explores the universe, the multiverse, and let us show how small we actually are and how far the next planet is, that if we want to jump in or on the next planet, because we have no planet B, we always say that there is no planet B, great, so we have this current planet where we are, but where could potentially be a planet B? We've got all these other inspirational leaders who try to reach even places outside. It's impossible. We have to live with the planet that we currently have. So yes, for now, there is no planet B. What I like about his explanation always, why I compare it with the Grinch. I'm sure you've seen the movie. You know, the Grinch who stole Christmas. We are actually those people that live on the speck. We are all together. We are the Wu group, or the Wu family that lives on that small speck. We have to, the Wu, that was called in the Grinch, the people that live on the small speck where they live. And we live on a very, very small, tiny place. So that means that all of us, you, me, everybody in the room, everybody outside of the room, everybody on the planet, can take action. It's all in our own hands to make a change. And I think so that's in the end, my real inspiration is the power that's in all of us and in your heart, in everybody's hearts to make that change. Find the courage to stand up and learn to say no. When I go to a supermarket, sometimes I just say, I really want to have these lovely strawberries, but no, I'm not going to buy them because they are packed incorrectly. This is not the way how I want to purchase my materials. And then I step over my own current wishes, current feelings, but that's sometimes what you have to do. And I think if all of us do that, and even if you do one of these actions every single day, we will make a significant change.
Can you just tell me, what was that person's name again?
Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Okay, fantastic. So
people look him up. Yeah, he's fantastic.
Well, I'm sure everyone will be looking him up.
Yeah.
That's absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
So, leaders, transformational change. Who comes to mind?
On this topic, we focused on climate, not broader sustainability. So on climate in particular, it's got to be Al Gore for me, right? Because I think with transformative change, it's got to be about the urgency of the problem and then the solutions. And he's done both very well. So he came up with, an inconvenient truth and set about training a lot of people all over the world to go and spread the word about the nature of the problem. And then he invested in the solutions with David Blood and others, creating Generation Investment Management and actually backing businesses and technologies and entrepreneurs that are coming up with the solutions. And Generation is probably one of the leading sustainable finance companies in the world. And then he just has that power of articulation and communication and persuasion. So when I went to 3 talks of his in 2006 in London, when I was still actually at an oil and gas company called BP, where I was running the renewable energy business. I'd gone there as an environmental consultant post my MBA to try and turn it into a global green energy company and failed dismally. But we did get $8 billion to create the renewables and alternatives business. So I was representing that business as the head of that business. And I was invited to these talks by him. And after the 3rd talk in 1 week, because I could get access to all these things, after 3 talks by him in 1 week, I was absolutely convinced, which is why I applied and signed up to go to Nashville and spend a week with him.
Yeah, interesting, because of course he won the Nobel Peace Prize, I think, for the film.
An Inconvenient Truth, best documentary, yes.
Yeah, so that's kind of interesting that he wins a Peace Prize, because of course, peace and sustainability are inextricably linked. I mean, one of the main themes we have with running the show, is no climate action, no peace, right?
Absolutely.
And so you left BP, did you? And
Yeah, I mean, I left in 2006 having built a renewable energy business. A more senior person took it over from me and I went to become an entrepreneur. So I've been an entrepreneur in the sustainability field since 2006.
An inspiring time to leap forward and do the amazing work that you do now, I'm sure.
It's been exciting.
I bet it has. Valerie, so leaders, I mean, of course, you're all leaders yourselves, but a leader that's created transformational change, who comes to mind?
Jeremy, can I be a little provocative? I really respect and admire leaders like Al Gore. 100%. I don't disagree with that. And Al himself specifically was one of the founding godfathers, we call him, of Imagine. He stood in the UN when we launched it, Paul and I, and talked about how it was incredibly exciting and impactful, and it was something people needed to come on. And I did feel the mantle of leadership being passed on. So I'd say this with all due respect to Al and to Paul and to many of the other leaders, but I do not think that a time for now of the individual hero. I think that we are in the collective. And I think that if I think about who is a transformational leader, I think of it in a small group of people who come together and who give each other courage. So humans get courage in collective. And why do we even need courage? And the root word of cur, the heart. Why do we need the brave heart? Is because we're doing something that's against the norm. It's against our incentives to be able to do it. How do we get courage? Well, we get courage. Everybody's had that in our own personal life. Maybe you needed to end a relationship that wasn't a healthy one. Maybe you needed to move on into a new job or a new space. And how did we get that? We got that by talking with other people and being like, oh, yes, we can, you can, I believe in you. So for me, transformational leadership, the time of the me is past. It is we. And so when I think of transformational leaders, I think about the tribe of people who are coming together, who are humble, who are asking the questions, not saying thou shalt not, go this way, don't do that. They're saying, I don't know, but I need you and we can together. So the people for me, when I think about what the transformational leadership is embodied, just to get very concrete, to put two pictures in your mind, my mind goes to when we were sitting in upstate New York, not too far away from where I am right now, at the farm home of one of our mission board members, Sue Rockefeller. And we had farmers from regenerative ag farmers from around the world coming and sitting on hay bales. And we had CEOs, human beings who happen to be CEOs from across the full food value chain, sitting on hay bales together. And we had Robert Bonney from the U.S. Secretary of Ag and USAID coming and sitting on hay bales. And we were in a conversation that said, the way that we grow our food is not going to feed people in this environment, and it is killing our soil. How do we change it together? And what do you, the most vulnerable in the system, the farmer in this moment, at the center, what do you need from us in order to be able to make regenerative agriculture the norm? And regenerative agriculture is just an idea. It's just a word. It's just a way of kind of making things. It actually is, by the way, going back to the natural ways that we made things. But being able to align on a word, an idea, regenerative agriculture, and say, we can do that together, but we have to do it all together. And what do you need from us? And humbly listening. And at a similar moment, who is transformational leadership? Who do I think of when I think of a transformational leader? I think of when we were in Oxford and we convened this cohort of Imagine leaders or applicants, 120 applicants, 40 were chosen from around the world. And we had Michael, one of them. Michael is a chef. And Michael cares deeply and passionately about enough food for his country in Africa. And Michael stood up as a very, very soft-spoken man. And he said, I need help to transform food. I want to make healthy food in my country. And if we don't have healthy food for enough people, we will not have enough stability. It will mean that we're going to have more war, and it's going to be terrible for my people. Exactly as you said, Jeremy, about peace. And what happened in that moment wasn't just Michael as a transformational leader. It's that right behind me, I heard Christina, and I heard Bernd, and I heard Dustin, and I heard Wendy say, what do you need? We can help. I've got this. We can do that. We can open this up. And somebody behind me said, oh my God, I don't even think he knows what just happened. Because you had people from some of the biggest companies around the world, heads of procurement, leaders of businesses and markets saying, Michael, we're on your team. Like, you tell us what you need and how we can help. And Indira Indira, who does embody Indira Gandhi. And she said, I need help to transform the food system to plant-based protein, or if we're going to have meat, it needs to be sustainable meat. And the transformational leadership that moved me was people saying, we're on your team, honey. We can help. Well, tell us what you need. So transformational leader for me is the we. It's those group of people who came together because they care, who are friends now, who said we've got each other's back as fellow travelers, and we will help each other to be able to realize the change we wish to see. And so for me, it's like what Jenny is doing in her company. I'm quite sure she has put a group of people around her and that she's inspiring others in order to be able to affect the change. So when I say Jenny is a transformational leader, I think about Jenny and the people she must have around her in order to be doing the leading edge work that they're doing in packaging.
Amazing, Valerie. Thank you. So Jenny, to Valerie's point, I mean, it's a good point, isn't it? You know, we need to work as a collective. I mean, what's your view on what needs to be done to manifest more individuals who are willing to make that transformation?
Yeah, so and thank you for chipping into my role a little bit here as Chief Sustainability Officer. What does a Chief Sustainability Officer? What is that role? The role is indeed more that of a conductor in front of an orchestra. So I'll make sure that within my company, and we're making metal packaging solutions, which are infinitely recyclable, which makes it a very good product, certainly also for the future, because we make sure that for generations to come, there will be materials and resources available. We can pick up the materials that we actually put into the market. They are collected for recycling, highest recycling rates of all the packaging materials out there. And we make sure that we make new packages out of that over and over and over again. And I think that is very important. And how do you get there? And I'll come back to my role as Chief Sustainability Officer. I have to make sure that within my organization, all the functions are lined up in the similar way in order to reach our objective to bring more recyclable materials into the market. And of course, also work in our factories to improve them over and over again, because you cannot be complacent. You cannot just say, okay, what we have today is already fantastic because our materials are infinitely recyclable, so we're done. No, we're never done. We push it to the boundaries, we take it to the next level. And what we're now doing as well, instead of only looking into your own organization, first you have to have your own house in order. If your own house is a mess, you can never get other ones on board as well in your journey as well. So our house is in order, and now we are reaching out to our full value chain to inspire, to bring along discussions, and even to do what we call innovative sustainability sessions to ask for, what is the actual material that you need? The package itself is actually, it's more of a service. We make sure that the valuable content can be brought from A to B, preferably at ambient temperatures, and it can be with metal. So in that way, you can significantly reduce the climate impact. But you cannot do that by yourself. I need my customers, I need my customers' customers, I need the recyclers to help me bring back these materials, and I need our suppliers. So we have to bring all of that together in a collective, and only then you can really make a change.
So a lot of dialogue happening amongst the organization, and research, development, constantly looking for new solutions.
Yeah, in fact, actually my role has been expanded also to be responsible for the global R&D department, so research and development, in order to facilitate the sustainability discussion more and more into the new materials that we want to bring into the market.
So the piece of material you're holding now is infinitely recyclable. It will recycle forever.
The metal can be recycled forever, over and over and over again. Yes.
Okay. Fascinating. So we've talked about, Valerie talking about it's not just about the individual leader. That makes a lot of sense. Therefore, we all have to be leaders, right, in our own lives. And we need to all transform to, avert the climate crisis that we see coming our way. How do we do that? What do we reach? What do we look for? How are we all going to become a transformational leader?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely we need to be the change in our individual lives. But we're talking about transformative change, which is system change, which is fundamental era change. So the last time we had an era was the human slavery era, and then was replaced by fossil fuels when Wilberforce and others, the abolitionists, banned slavery in 1833 in the House of Commons in this country. we moved to fossil fuels because the steam engine had been invented, and William Wilberforce persuaded the British East India Company through the chief exec Charles Grant there was a better way than human slavery. We now had machines which would be fueled by fossil fuels. So we had the Industrial Revolution, right? What we're talking about now is not incremental change. We're talking about transformative change, which is how do we move from the fossil fuel era, because we're talking about the climate crisis, not sustainable development in general, from the fossil fuel era to the clean energy era. And that's what I'm intimately involved in. That's what I focus on day in, day out. And I try and get other people along that journey. So working with collaborators. So for example, a guy like Nigel Topping, who I've just been working with on the UNFCCC team. So that was about launching the Race to Zero and the Race to Resilience from the UN to businesses and to sectors saying, join the Race to Zero, join the Race to Resilience. Science-based pathways are now the thing. You have to develop a science-based pathways. So that unleashed the whole net zero trajectory. Now companies are trying to develop a science-based pathways, but that's on the policy framework side and the campaigning side. On the other side, it's about unlocking capital, mobilizing money to go into the solutions, which are clean technologies around the world. Business I'm involved in out of Bangalore is about rickshaws, converting rickshaws from diesel tuk-tuks to electric tuk-tuks on swappable batteries and getting lots of investors into scaling that model globally, right? So it's got to be about focusing on this problem, which is we're burning too much fossil fuels. And there's a stick element to that. At some point, we're going to have to ban the burning of fossil fuels. There's a carrot element to that, which is, guys, your money will give you a better return in the clean economy than in the fossil fuel economy over the medium term.
Yeah. I remember speaking with John a few climate action shows back. He was saying from Greenpeace, saying, there's two things that we got to do. We've got to stop burning fossil fuels and we've got to go to a plant-based diet. And actually, if we did both of those things, we'd be very close to resolving.
But that's why I bring up smoking, because smoking is a great example of fundamentally societal shift away from something that was considered cool to now no one does it in public places. They're not allowed to, but they don't want to because it's socially unacceptable as well. We have to have the same thing with fossil fuels.
Valerie, listen, we've got 3 minutes and 52 seconds at this point, Valerie. So I want to ask you quickly, right? I mean, I can't help but listen to all of this. You say it's, of course, we know leaders, we need to be partners, we need to be, leaders, all of us need to be a leader together, right? And work in partnership. I couldn't agree with you more. It's wonderful, right? This is totally right. It makes me kind of think the central role of education, though, Valerie. I mean, education needs to really, pick up the torch here, doesn't it?
Yes, but I also think, if you're talking about patterning early minds, so the people who are going through education to say, how do we make and design things? And I agree. I think if what we're talking about right now is that we've got a very short period of time. And as Charles was saying, we've got to be able to help transform the system. I think that means people who are currently in positions of power on how they decide differently, how they spend time and money, very concretely. And so from that perspective, I think, and our work very much is, if you go very concrete in the interest of time, what Jenny talked about was that we've got to pull together people across the value chain. Yes, they can do that, but the role of Imagine is to say there needs the role of the convener. And so we are convening leaders who are in food and also packaging and materials, who can work together to help to transform it. And to your point, Jeremy, we're using the space of education because we're convening leaders in Oxford, across the University of Oxford, where we can learn about systems change. What does that mean to understand ourselves as a personal system and work on ourselves? What does it mean to understand how to lead the team and the organizational system? But what does it mean to practically partner together for an industry system or a courageous collective, as we talk about it? And so very concretely, very practically, if people are interested and their place of power and how they can help to spend time and money differently is within food. And if they're looking at accelerating to the shift to plant-based protein or to regenerative agriculture, or as our community is now saying, we want to put a group together to help to accelerate the transformation on packaging and materials to eliminate single-use plastic. Very concretely, what that means is identifying and putting together in the room, and we're doing this specifically in Oxford in September, and we do still have some applications open for others, to put together people who are in the big corporates, like the heads of procurement, the leaders of the business of some of the world's biggest companies, with the disruptive innovators, with people who have the new technologies, with people who are doing things like a cup that is made at that everybody can use. That's absolutely going to be manifested of the packaging that we need to see in the world. So we're saying, can you help put people together and accelerate the trust that can then create the friendships, that can then create the partnerships? And so very concretely, others can do this as well to create a marketplace for systems transformation. And very specifically, that means who are the 20 to 30 to 40 people who, if they came together in big corporations and disruptive innovators with some catalytic investors and people who have some of the money and people who can help to change the regulatory environment in key markets, put us together and let us practically partner together to accelerate the change we wish to see. That's the closest thing I know, Jeremy, to being able to say we can turn this thing around. And I do believe that we can.
Amazing. Valerie, can I just ask you a quick question and just a single answer, quick answer for me? How do people find out about Imagine and what you're doing in October or September? Where do they go to? Is it imagine.com?
Imagine.one. Why? Because the song says, you may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. Or
Fantastic.
They can go to Paul Pullman on LinkedIn or my LinkedIn as well.
Okay. So you can go to Valerie Keller. You can go imagine.one and find out information. So Jenny, please, if we want to find out more information about the work of Trivium and what you're doing, where would people go?
Of course, triviumpackaging.com. Yeah, the .one is very interesting. I'll think about that for the future. But for us, it's just .com. And of course, my LinkedIn or the Trivium Packaging LinkedIn.
Okay, so Trivium Packaging LinkedIn, and of course, Jenny's and triviumpackaging.com. Yeah. Fantastic. And Charles, just lastly, I mean, listen, for the people who want to find out about the incredible work that you're doing, the consultancy work that you're doing, where can we find out?
I mean, I think it does depend on which audience and which geography we're talking about. But I think using LinkedIn is the obvious place to start, because it's all about getting plugged into the different communities who make the change. One of them being the Conduit, which is where I'm based. Community of Change Makers in London. It's great.
Okay. Valerie, Charles, and Jenny, absolute honor for me to be a part of this. Thank you very much for the absolutely incredible work that you do. Fantastic. So how wonderful to hear from such an inspiring group of individuals speaking on the importance of leadership against climate change and the steps we can all take to lessen humanity's impact on the globe. So please tell your friends about the broadcast right now and share the link with them. Every view helps. And why not register on peaceoneday.org and follow our social media so that you can find out the latest information about upcoming experiences. And now, time for an interview. It's our great pleasure to welcome back Valerie Keller, the co-founder and CEO of Imagine, who helps leaders use their powers for good. Valerie, welcome back.
Thank you, Jeremy. It's such a pleasure to be with you. Thank you for your incredible energy and holding the space for us. It's always an inspiration to spend time with you and be part of the Peace One Day community.
Well, I mean, listen, that's very kind of you to say so, but I have to say, after 25 years of being on the road, like I said, in that moment that we all had together, it's just an incredible honor to be with people who are really on the front lines of trying to save humanity. And the kind of the fuel that you get from something like Valerie, I know that you understand, because you meet the same people. It's an incredible privilege.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
let's ask some questions. Can't wait. Okay. So Valerie, could you tell? Now we've got a little bit more time here. We've got 15 minutes. So could you tell us about yourself and your journey to this point? And I mean, take me through, what's happened for you to be where you are today.
Jeremy, it's a long story. I've lived like 9 lives in one. I like to think I got more. I shared a little bit of in the other interview, so I'll share it a bit. But I also think it's important for others to find themselves in my story, right? I have a bit of a unique backstory, maybe than most, in terms of I was born in South Louisiana, so a Cajun girl, a Southerner. And then my parents were what I call affectionately and respectfully hippies for Jesus. And so they were seekers. And the interesting thing that I think is very much an analog to our time today is that the world was in total turmoil. When I came into the world of 1976, and I'm dating myself, the Vietnam War had ravaged the world, talking about seeing things we can't unsee. We had seen the pictures of this, child running naked, just clothes blown off. we had seen almost in a way a full expression of how humanity can be so dark and how we can hurt each other in such a big way. And then you had the converse of that, of people who were holding space for a new dream, for peace one day, for a world that works for everyone. And the predecessor to Imagine was the song Imagine, that was birthed and written actually by John Lennon and Yoko Ono, so the masculine and the feminine. But we had seen people who were craving to step out of this horrible world and create something that was new and different and a place where people could thrive. And so you had Woodstock going on, and then you had people like my parents who sought out a sect. It was a Christian cult. It didn't start off that way, I don't think. It started off from a pure place. But what ended up happening was I ended up making my own clothes, but I didn't know the difference between making my clothes as skirts because I was a woman, that's what I was told, versus this is just what we do around here. This is just normal. And so a lot of the things that I grew up with that were normal in my world is kind of the stuff that's becoming normal now in terms of we grew our food. And the food that we grew was organic. My mom was getting seeds that were coming in. And I'm the oldest of 7 girls, all born at home, of course. And when she was raising her kids, we were homeschooled in many ways, using what a lot of the kind of education that you mentioned earlier, leading edge education, was helping people to understand how to learn about the environment, how to learn about being in social groups and for each other. And so in many ways, I think my personal story, while some things were pretty dark about that world as well, and I have seen what happens when in the collective we can get a little insane as well, if we aren't in a space of solving for what we really care about is how do we take care of each other? How do we take care of our land? And I think my personal story of just breaking it down that simply is also part of the driver today. But even though I was in Indiana, wearing long skirts that I was growing, and we were organic farming, I was being sprayed by crops with pesticides dropped on us, I'm sure, by some of the companies, some of the human beings who I'm working with now today. And so it's another analog for all of us is that we can take ourselves out of the world and go try and be in a cornfield or on an island or do whatever it is that we can, but we are interly connected. We're all part of each other. And so I think the opportunity for us right now is to say, okay, for each of us, wherever we are in that place, can we make it a bit more simple? How do we make, how do we buy, how do we eat, how do we wear things that embody an integral, nature-connected way that isn't polluting? And in my journey, I also traveled the lands. I think I mentioned it to you in the earlier segment, but I went from then running homeless shelters, job training centers. It was property development, very much about saying, how do we help people? And I didn't get onto the how do we help the environment until way later. I left a job in finance. I was working for a bank and I could see the power of money, and I still see the power of money now. And that's why I work with the people in the world's biggest corporations and big pots of money, because in this world that we've designed, we've created and made it up so that money has a lot of power in this world. Money can convene, money can move things. It's become a necessary source of energy. It also makes us crazy. So I left finance to go and work for helping people. And I thought, oh my God, the environment, somebody else has got to deal with that because I'm just trying to save lives. And what I saw also was that you couldn't help people without addressing the natural environment. I was on the ground when Hurricane Katrina happened, and you may remember in New Orleans, and how you had people up on the rooftops, and people died as a result. And the shame that I feel about that is that I was a part of a leadership group, Leadership Louisiana, and we knew. We had seen the science that said there's going to be a big storm. It's going to come in. New Orleans is going to be a bowl. The water is going to be trapped. And by the way, it was created. Why? Because of the natural oil and gas, unnatural oil and gas pipelines coming in and actually then scarring the land and bringing the seawater in. It was a man-made natural disaster. And Al Gore talks about this a bit while as well. And I hear it in the halls of Davos. I hear it in Oxford. We hear it in corporate boardrooms around the world, and particularly those who are working for big insurance companies. It is absolutely predictable that we are going to continue to see crises that we're going to call natural disasters. These are entirely predictable. The impacts, of course, mean that it's going to have people washing up on the shores. My co-founder, Paul Pullman, was actually just speaking in Greece last week, and I was talking to him on the phone, and he said, did you hear what happened? Right outside the resort where he was being convened to talk to leaders about how to help change the system, there had been yet another boat that had capsized. Maybe 100 people, 800 people, we didn't even know at the time, whose lives were lost. Why was that? They were just trying to get to a better place. So when we see natural disasters that are coming, it's gonna destabilize societies. Human beings who are living here now today want a better life for themselves. They want a better life for their children. They're gonna do the same thing that my parents did when they left South Louisiana and went up into the cornfields of Indiana to try and find a community and a life where they could be safe and raise their kids according to a belief that they believed in. And we're gonna see more of it. Syria and what happens there, and the fact that you had all these immigrants that are now in Europe. My new chosen home is in Europe. And it was completely predictable to have human beings washing up on the shores of these countries because these countries are man-made borders. It's all constructs of our mind. The idea of the nation state, it's a thing. We decided, some other humans who aren't here right now decided that this is called the United States of America, where I am right now, or what Europe is. And so I think it's super important for those of us who are in leadership roles or just human beings today who say, we see what's coming. We actually then can step into our leadership to say, how can we partner together with people who have the power to help change the system? And for me, I don't know that it's the total answer, but I have found that I was being invited to run for office when I was in South Louisiana, and I couldn't decide whether I was a Republican or a Democrat. I'm like, am I a red or a blue? I'm a purple. I'm part of humanity. And the United States is part of the world. And actually, if I think about it, who has power in this current reality? It's business. Business has the power to change things. And that was my journey to Oxford, to do a mid-career at Oxford at the Said Business School. It was my journey to Davos. But when I got into it, it was like business. Business is human beings. Organizations are made of organisms. And it's the shared belief of the human beings who are in those organizations or who then can create that as a shared reality. So then we started working with top leaders of big businesses, put the C-suite, the leaders together, finance, the divisions together to help to change it. And ultimately, I come back now to where I began. It's the human being. It is the leader who happens to be a leader now today, who then puts the right people around them who can change it. And right now, that's not just leaders within inside big businesses. That is people who can partner together, who have the buying power of the big corporations or the brand power or the market power to make things cool. Fashion, we can decide what is fashionable. We decide that fashionable is sustainable. There's even new terms out right now called hedonistic sustainability. I love it. It goes to the core of human beings. Human beings are pleasure seeking. We do want to have a great life. We do want our lives to matter and for it to be fulfilling. And the opportunity that we have right now to have a hedonistic sustainability or to have purposeful play, to think about it in a positive and hopeful and playful way is, I think, the challenge of our times, is to keep ourselves positive and hopeful, which is something that we can do. Humanity over time has been able to achieve incredible feats when we've acted together. We've done it by leaving behind many of us. We've done it by leaving out many women. So the challenge for us right now is all of humanity, which includes womanity, to be able to step together to say, how do we help change things together? And for us at Imagine, we're convening small groups of people, but a community of several hundred people who can partner together, just as I was transformed as a part of the leadership communities, small teams of people, whether it was the World Economic Forum Young Global Leaders, whether it's been part of the Young Presidents Organization, YPO, and other communities where we've been able to build friendships and back each other over time. And that's what Imagine is doing. It's the only thing that I know that has been massively transformational for my own life, being able to step back, learn, think about what it means to be a system leader, to think about what it means to be a human being today, to partner with others and have fun doing it, who can help change the game together, and to understand that the game that we've created here, what we've made up is normal, is not normal. It's just what's been created. Last thing I'll say about this, Jeremy, mindful of time.
I think that humans are awake. And I think early humans, particularly those who have not been patterned with this is the way that the world is, and this is what it must mean to be a human being today and go get some stuff and make some stuff, they see. And I think there's another phenomenon that I would call the daughters waking up the daddies. I've seen now young girls and young children who just ask the question, why is it this way? It doesn't have to be this way. And that's what we see when we get leaders who come together. They talk about what their children are saying, that their children are saying, plant-based, of course it's plant-based. We can get there. Of course we're using packaging and materials that is sustainable. Of course, because it just doesn't fit for us to not be. So very concretely, I think if people want to find partners, we call them play partners for the journey, to be a part of Imagine, we'd love for people to apply to be a part of the Imagine Leaders community. They can find them on LinkedIn or on the Imagine.one website. See who the tribe is that's forming. If you know somebody in the community, reach out. If you know somebody who should be, nominate them. Very concretely, we're bringing leaders together a couple times a year in Oxford to be looking at systems transformation, looking at ourselves and our own lives and our own leadership, learning from been there, done that leaders. Imagine has a community of alumni CEOs, former CEOs like my co-founder, Paul Pullman, but 50-50 men and women. Sally Jewell, the former head of the Secretary of the Interior, CEO of REI, and people like that who are ready to help partner to accelerate leaders who are systems leaders and to accelerate their businesses. And very practically, we're just about putting together those leaders who happen to be in big corporations with those disruptive innovators and those who have the system around them. We'd love help curating the community, Jeremy. If people know or they want to be a part of it, we'd love to know too.
Well, Valerie Keller, absolutely amazing. Our time is up. I wish we had more time, but we're going to go to some others now. Valerie Keller, please, everybody, find out about her absolutely amazing work. And of course, go to imagine.one. Valerie, good luck with everything that you do. Never stop. Thank you.